Hi. Today we'll be talking about parallel and perpendicular lines, two properties that we are able to find after we start learning how to graph lines. In the previous video, we went over y equals mx plus b, basically the slope-intercept formula, where m is the slope and b is the y-intercept. And we looked at how those two properties affected the shapes of graphs, and we got pretty comfortable graphing, different types of lines and shapes from that. Now, it turns out that using those properties, we can discover two very interesting types of lines: parallel lines and perpendicular lines. So if we remember back, there was an example where we were graphing y equals 2x and y equals 2x minus 1. We noticed this interesting phenomenon. So here's y equals 2x, thereabout, and then there's like y equals 2x minus 1, thereabout. We noticed this interesting phenomenon where the negative 1 shifted this graph down a bit. But when we have them in unison, they look pretty strange. They look like if we were to extend these lines out into infinity, they would never touch. And that's pretty interesting, because most time when you have two lines, they'll eventually, at some point, come into contact with each other. But not these lines. These lines seem like they would never touch. Now, why is that? It's because they have the same slope. If you have two lines with the same slope, but different y-intercepts, they will never touch. They will never intersect, because they will be increasing at the same rate, but they'll be starting from a different position. So as a result, they'll never hit each other, because by the time one line has reached one position, the other line would be reaching a further position, and they'll never catch up. So these lines will never intersect ever, and we call those parallel lines. Now, how do you find or spot parallel lines? It's all in the slopes. If two equations for lines have the same slope, that means that they will be parallel. And that means itself that they will never intersect. Now, another important property to talk about is perpendicular lines. Now, these lines do intersect, but they intersect in a pretty strange way. So, I'm going to have y equals 2x and y equals negative 1/2 x. Now watch what happens when I graph this. Now you may have a hard time seeing it, but this graph actually forms a right angle. This is a 90-degree right angle formed by the intersection of these two lines. That's also very interesting. We call these lines perpendicular. And once again, the reason that these lines form a right angle, a 90-degree angle, is all in the slopes. Instead of having the same slope, they have opposite reciprocals. What does that mean? Well, a reciprocal is basically you invert something, right? The reciprocal of 2 is going to be 1 over 2. The reciprocal of 1/2 is, I'm going to flip that, and that's going to become 1. The reciprocal of 1/2 is going to become 1/2 flipped, which is 2. And the opposite reciprocal means I'm just going to I'm going to change the sign of it as well, right? So 1/2, negative 1/2. The reciprocal of negative 1/2 is negative 2. The opposite of negative 2 is 2. Hence this slope here. Because these two slopes are opposite reciprocals, they will form a perpendicular intersection. And we will call these lines perpendicular lines when we're referring to the both of them. Now you may be asking, this all seems kind of random. Why would I need to know this? Well, oftentimes on tests or quizzes or just in practice problems, an assignment will give you a line. They'll say, graph the line y equals 3x minus 1, and it's, you know, whatever, it's perpendicular line. And it'll be up to you to determine what that perpendicular line will be, or what that parallel line will be. But you might be asking, well, we can see that parallel and perpendicular lines have these properties. And we can see that perpendicular lines intersect in a certain way. Now that I know all this stuff about graphing lines, there might be a way for me to simplify my work. There might be a way for me to not have to solve algebraic equations or systems of equations, if you remember that. I could just graph them. And you're absolutely right, there is. And we'll talk about that in the next video. But for this video, just remember, parallel lines, same slope, they'll never intersect. Perpendicular lines, they meet at a right angle, and they have opposite reciprocal slopes. That's all I have. I hope this helped, and I hope you have a great day.